In a world where airlines fight for every drop of fuel and retire planes after just 15 years, these giants are dinosaurs. The MD-11 is loud, dirty, and incredibly thirsty for fuel. Passenger airlines gave up on this play way back in the early 2000s. But look at the night sky. It is still swarming with them. Why do the richest logistic companies in the world still cling to technology from the 1980s? The answer lies in the mass. It goes against all common sense, but it makes billions of dollars. But first, hit the like and subscribe button. This simple action is vital for me. Thank you very much. Mathematics. Capital expenditures versus fuel. Wait, doesn't an old plane like this burn money every time it flies? Let's look at the real difference between owning a plane and flying it. If you wanna buy a brand new Boeing 777 freighter today, the official price is around $352 million. In reality, after negotiations, airlines pay about $160 to $170 million. That is still a huge amount of money. Now let's look at the MD-11. FedEx and UPS were smart. They bought these used planes from passenger airlines for peanuts, maybe $10 or $20 million each. Then they spent about $15 million to convert them into cargo planes. The final price for a ready-to-fly MD-11? Only $25 to $35 million. For the price of just one shiny new Boeing 777, you can buy a fleet of 5 or 6 MD-11s. But what about the gas? It is true, the MD-11 is thirsty. It burns about 20 to 25% more fuel than a modern jet. That is roughly 8,000 kilograms of fuel per hour compared to 6,000 kilograms in a 777. However, unless oil prices explode to $150 a barrel, that extra fuel cost simply doesn't matter. Today, with oil sitting comfortably around $60 or $70, the math is even better. The massive amount of money you save on buying the plane easily covers the fuel bill for years. As they say in the airline business, the best plane is the plane with no monthly payments. The lazy plane factor. Utilization. So why doesn't this math work for passenger airlines? Why doesn't KLM fly old cheap planes? It is because the business models are completely different. To pay for itself, a modern jet must be in the sky for 14 to 16 hours every day. When you fly that much, saving fuel is the most important thing in the world. But cargo is a different game. The life of a FedEx MD-11 is actually very lazy. It usually flies a short trip at night to a major hub, like Memphis or Louisville. It sits on the ground all day long while packages are sorted. Finally, it flies back the next night. In total, it might only fly for 3 to 6 hours a day. Here's the logic. You cannot buy a new Boeing 777 for $170 million and let it sit on a concrete for 18 hours a day. That is a huge amount of frozen money, doing absolutely nothing. But for a cheap older plane, that is fine. If the job involves a lot of waiting on the ground, the cheap MD-11 is actually the perfect machine. The golden mean niche. Load capacity. You might ask, why not just use a different old plane? Well, the MD-11 survives because it has a unique superpower – its size. It fits into a perfect niche that no other older plane can fill. Let's look at the alternatives. First, you have the Boeing 767-300 freighter. It is a great plane, but it can only carry about 53 to 58 tons. For long flights between continents, that is often just too small. On the other side, you have the legendary Boeing 747-400, the jumbo jet. It is a monster that can lift 113 to 120 tons. But here's the problem. Flying a 4-engine giant that is only half full is incredibly expensive. It is overkill. This is where the MD-11 hits the absolute sweet spot. It carries roughly 85 to 92 tons. It holds significantly more cargo than the smaller 767, but it is much cheaper to operate than the massive 747. For specific high-volume routes, like Anchorage to Tokyo or Cologne to Louisville, the MD-11 is not too big and not too small. It is just right. Engineering hell and hole number 2. But it is not all good news. The accountants love this plane. The mechanics absolutely hate it. The biggest headache is the number 2 engine, the one stuck right in the tail. Unlike the engines under the wings, you cannot just walk up to this one. It sits extremely high off the ground. Mechanics need special high-lift platforms just to reach it. Changing an engine on the wing is a standard job, but changing the tail engine is a logistical nightmare. It takes much longer and requires way more effort. And the worst part – spare parts. Remember, McDonnell Douglas disappeared in 1997. No one is manufacturing new parts for this plane anymore. So how do FedEx and UPS keep them flying? They have to cannibalize other planes. They buy old retired MD-11s just to strip them for parts, like vultures. It is the only way to keep the fleet alive. Pilot killer or diva? If the mechanics hate the MD-11, the pilots, well, they respect it, but they also fear it. Some call it the Diva, others have darker nicknames. The reason is simple. This plane does not forgive mistakes. Statistically, the MD-11 has a higher accident rate during landings than almost any other modern wide-body jet. You might remember the tragic crashes of FedEx Flight 80 in Narita or Lufthansa Flight 8460 in Riyadh. Both happened right at the moment of landing. Why is it so difficult to land? It comes down to physics. To save fuel and reduce drag, engineers made the horizontal stabilizer, the tail of the plane, smaller than usual. While this made the plane efficient, it also made it less stable. To keep this heavy beast in the air with such a small tail, you have to fly fast. The landing speed, or VREF, is incredibly high, often around 150 to 160 knots, almost 300 km per hour. This is 20 to 30 km per hour faster than similar planes. Everything happens much quicker for the pilots. To help with stability, there is a computer system called LSAS. It is supposed to assign the pilots, but sometimes it behaves unpredictably, fighting against their inputs. The biggest danger is the bounce. If a pilot hits the runway a little too hard, the plane can bounce back into the air. If they try to push the nose down too quickly to fix it, the plane can enter a violent cycle called porpoising. In the worst cases, the nose gear collapses and the plane flips over on its back. It is a powerful machine, but it demands absolute perfection every time it touches the ground. The end of an era. However, nothing lasts forever. The end is finally coming. FedEx has officially announced the beginning of the end. By the year of 2028, they plan to retire their fleet. They are replacing these old warriors with the smaller Boeing 767 for shorter routes and the massive Boeing 777 for the long hauls. But here is the surprise. They are not killing the MD-11 because of fuel prices. The real killer is maintenance costs. As these planes get older, the engines break down more often. When a plane is stuck in a hangar for repairs, it loses money. Eventually, the cost of fixing it becomes higher than the money you save by owning it. Now I want to ask you, do you miss the era of Trijets, or do you prefer the efficiency of modern twin jets? Write your thoughts below. If you learned something new today, hitting the subscribe button is the best way to support me. As a new channel, every subscriber truly counts and motivates me to create better stories. Click here to watch the next video. Thanks for watching and see you next time!